one of the UK's biggest business organisations, is calling for an overhaul of the immigration system for when the UK leaves the European Union. At the moment, there is, as we know, free movement for people from the European Union, meaning that EU citizens are entitled to look for a job in another member state and work there without needing a permit. But the government says this is going to end after Brexit. Now, currently there's a cap on the number of people coming from outside the EU. The CBI this morning is calling for an end to that cap and the policy on reducing immigration. It says that without enough foreign workers in this country, many employers are going to struggle to fill roles. And the government spokesperson has told us that they are committed to bringing down net migration to sustainable levels. So what should a new immigration system look like? Let's talk to four business people. Lee Summers runs a building company in London. He employs migrants but voted to leave the EU. Fleur Sexton runs an education company based in the West Midlands and thinks that there needs to be more migration to fill jobs. Jack Ward is from the British Growers Association, whose members rely on seasonal staff. Kate Shoesmith is from the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, an organisation which contributed to today's CBI report, and she's here in the studio. Good morning. Just briefly on the CBI report, we'll talk to the others in a moment. What are the headlines coming out of that?
What they're saying is that when you look at every sector of the economy, all the regions across the UK, there's a real need for EU workers. So over half of the employers in our sector, so talking about recruitment, when they're supplying people in seasonal and temporary work, they've been using EU nationals over the last 12 months simply because they can't fill those jobs.
Why a real need for EU workers and not a real need just for workers in general?
They can't fill the jobs any other way. So we've got employment levels at a record high, unemployment rates at the minute 4.2%. It's a case of you're trying desperately to fill some of these jobs. So think about seasonal jobs where you're out in the fields, whether it's going in warehousing, agricultural work, retail work, can't fill the jobs in any other way.
Okay, well, let's talk about the seasonal work with Jack Ward from the British Growers Association. I mean, clearly, yours is you need seasonal workers. What's the situation at the moment?
Well, the situation is broadly this. The requirement for seasonal labour in the fresh produce industry, we're looking for about 85,000 people each year to help with the harvest, grading, packing of fresh produce. And the reports that we're seeing from various sectors this year suggest that we're seeing shortfalls of 10, 15%, potentially getting worse as the season goes on. And that's having a really serious effect on the fresh produce industry and on people's ability to invest and go forward in the future.
Why are you seeing shortages?
We're just seeing a reduction in the number of people wanting to come to the UK for any number of different reasons. And I think ultimately we're going to have to look further afield to find the people that we need.
Lee, could I bring you in? You run your own building firm in London. Do you have the workers you need for that?
We've certainly got the workers. I think what's the problem is at the moment is the uncertainty around it. So 10 or 15 years ago, the British government were welcoming EU workers into the UK, and then all of a sudden they're basically being told to bugger off. That's how they see it.
And so what? They might leave? I mean, you're saying you've got enough at the moment, but you fear that they might leave?
Well, there's a concern that they might leave. I don't think they will, to be honest with you. What they want is some certainty from the government to know, can they stay or do they need to go? But it will certainly affect me. 50% of my workforce from Poland. They do a fantastic job. It'd be a shame to see them go. I think they'll probably stay, but they just need to know where they are.
All right, Fleur Sexton, let's bring you in. You've got an education company. What are you seeing in terms of the people that are coming to this country? Is there a gap?
There's definitely a gap, and what we're seeing, because we do a lot of work with companies, helping companies to acquire the skills for their workers that they need. So we work with low-skilled people, skilling them up, and also trying to get people to acquire new skills, for example, in IT, and helping them to move on in their careers. And what we're seeing is that there's a real skills gap. So it's quite hard for a lot of companies to actually recruit the people they need. So for me, I think it's always about having that choice. So caps on targets is quite difficult, because I think businesses need to be trusted to be able to bring in the staff. The main thing is to have access to the skills they need. definitely, and it's hard, yeah.
Well, I mean, what seems to be most difficult about all this, and if I come back to you, Lee, because you voted to leave, and one of your concerns, I think, was indeed immigration. And you know, I can't help but notice you've got a company that relies on people coming in from other countries, and yet you're concerned about the number of people coming into this country from other countries. How do you personally square that circle? What do you think is the solution?
Well, I think the problem, first of all, is that the government have just opened the doors up and let anybody into the country. You need to have some sort of credibility to come into the country and contribute to society, pay your way. I think that's the main problem in this country. So, I mean, I do rely on the workers, and they're fantastic, but they come into this country with a skill set, and they pay their way, they pay their tax. I mean, I've got some Polish workers at the moment, you know, on £1,000 a week. People think that we pay them pittance. It's not the case at all. They're great workers, they do a great job, but they've got skills. I mean, you know, if you open up the doors and let just anybody come in, you know, what are you going to get? You know, any country in the world would want to open up their doors to some people that have got some skills and want to pay into the system and contribute to society. It's really, really simple. It's a common sense approach.
Okay, so Kate Shoesmith, I mean, there you go. That's therefore about saying, let's have a sort of skill set that we tick boxes. These are the sort of people we need, and therefore they can come in. Is that a sensible approach?
That makes perfect sense in many sectors. So if you're thinking about engineering jobs, IT jobs, construction, so where you've got, actually it's across the board in London, it's half of employers have been using EU nationals in construction jobs. But there's also other roles that are out there. So when we're talking about agricultural roles, horticulture roles, thinking about retail and warehousing, what we really need to see is we need to see people are valued for what they can bring to the economy. It may not be highly skilled work, but it's essential work for us.
So presumably, Jack Ward, for you, because, I mean, essentially picking fruit, it's not a particularly skillful job. You need to be able to get a lot of strawberries off the vine quickly, but it's not a skillful job. And how would you measure the contribution that the people you want to bring into the country give to your industry? How do you measure that and therefore fit that into an immigration policy?
Well, it's enormously important. Fresh produce is a huge part of our food system. We already rely on about 50% imports, and so our contribution is incredibly important. It's very important for the rural economy too. So if we haven't got access to the seasonal labour, what's going to happen is we're progressively going to export that industry to other parts of the world, you know, and that's not really a clever thing to be doing.
Fleur Sexton, I wonder whether there needs to be a reselling of the notion of what immigration and an immigrant is.
I think that's a really good point, because I think it has got to be skills focused. It has to be that people are valued for what they can bring. And I think having the idea that people are actually coming over to provide a certain service and they're valued for that, I think that's good for the community and it's good for the economy, because it must be that people can be seen to be bringing value. And also we do need to prioritise people who are currently UK residents. Obviously, you know, there's different approaches needed. So people coming over is one approach, but also we need to make sure that we are committed to upskilling our own people in this country as well. So I think that is a very positive way of looking at it, yeah.
And Kate Shoesmith, I mean, you know, is there a commitment to improving the skills level in this country?
Yeah, I think employers across the board have always been trying to do that. So you've got a number of employers now paying into the government's apprenticeship levy. What's particularly frustrating about that is trying to draw down that money. And actually, we could use that money much more effectively to train people that are UK-born, working in temporary jobs. If they were allowed to use that money in that way, it would give them better training opportunities, but we can't right now, and that's particularly frustrating from our perspective.
So, I mean, I go out to that point. Immigration, the immigrant, has become such a bad word in this country. How do you resell it? How does the CBI resell the notion that immigration is actually, most economists agree, is very important for this economy?
The CBI report says that every credible economic report talks about how immigration has a positive net effect. And actually, they've spoken to businesses across the board, including ours in the recruitment sector, and we're finding that we have to have people to fill these jobs. It's not at the expense of British workers, and I think that message has to be got through loud and clear.
All right, well, Kate Shoesmith and Jack Ward and Fleur Sexton and Lee Summers, thank you very much indeed.